Hello and welcome to Henrythejedi.com. My name is Henry Mbata, also known as Henrythejedi. And yeah, it's so good to be back. I'm sorry guys, I've been quite busy with freelance projects and all that. But it's good to be back and do some tutorials to teach you guys what you can learn in 3D Max or After Effects. So today's tutorial involves something which I've been pondering about for a couple of months. And that was about if you have an object, and how would you give it some random motion that you don't even have to animate it? In other words, it revolves around the idea of creating random animation inside of 3D Studio Max. And just creating random animation by itself might be a bit boring. So I'm going to show you how to create the random motion and then integrate with something cool like a particle system so that we can end up with a sphere that moves randomly. And then as the sphere moves randomly, it creates a light streak following it. More or less what I'm sure most of you had seen in the Apple iPod commercial, and also something like in the Tron movie. There was like what they call light cycles that were all over the place. So yeah, without further ado, here is a look. In fact, I've even forgotten what I used to say. Here is a look at what you're going to be creating today. Okay, so we're going to reset the scene so that we can do things properly, of course. And to start with, we're going to use an object that we can use, of course, to animate, to create the motion. Now, for that, we are going to use, you can use whichever object you feel you can use, but I'm going to use a sphere. It's just better to use, okay? And if we right-click on the perspective label and turn on edge faces, you can see, of course, what we are dealing with is just a simple sphere. The whole idea is just something that will drive the animation. Now, if you try to animate this manually by yourself, you will notice that sooner or later you will run out of ideas as to how to animate your object. Hence, that's why I'm going to show you how to create dynamic motion for an object by forcing it to follow paths that can be calculated using 3D Max's animation techniques. Okay. So here's what you're going to do. In fact, it's so simple. It's the first thing we are going to do. Alright, now to create random motion to our object, we need to access 3D Max's parameters, and they're all hidden right there. Most of them, that is, in the motion tab. It's like a little wheel spinning there at the top there. You see that? That's the motion tab. Okay. So again, to get there, remember you first start at the create panel, and then there's a modify hierarchy, and then finally, yeah, the motion tab. It's close to the display tab up there, okay? And then we need to expand the controllers by clicking on the plus there, that says assign controller. And as you can see, of course, 3D Max keeps all the settings here for the position, the rotation, and the scaling of any object. It keeps them all here in this tab here. Now, the only tab we need to manipulate is the position, of course, because this object here needs to be manipulated on the X, Y, and Z positions. So we're going to click on the position there. You see that? Now, once you click on it, you will notice that there's a little question mark there in the book that says assign controller. You see that? It now becomes activated when you click on it. Okay, so we're going to click on the assign controller there. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is where we are going to force it to take whatever animation controller that we want to apply to it. Now, as you can see, there are many animation controllers that 3D Max keeps available to use, and they can do all sorts of things really to the position of an object. And for our tutorial of today, we are going to use what 3D Max calls noise position. Now, of course, you will ask me, Henry or the Jedi, why are we using noise position? Well, because if you go onto Google, okay, and you look for something called noise, okay, and then you go under Google image search, And you can see Google shows you all kinds of graphs. You see that represents actually noise. Now if you click on any of them, you see that this, for instance, happens to be a noise graph, and you can see what noise tends to do. It goes up and down. Okay, now this up and down motion can be interpreted into positioning our objects inside of 3D Max. I know it might not make sense to you right now, but seriously speaking, these values here can be used to animate any object inside of 3D Max using its position, or it's even scaling or what. Okay, so we need to use the noise controller because it can give us this kind of feedback. Okay, marine biologists normally use it, people who know about sonars and all that, they use it especially for underwater studies, because it's quite useful. And by the way, I know some of you might ask, what beautiful city is below here? Well, this happens to be the city of Marrakesh in Morocco. As you can see, it's very beautiful. You've got the sea there. You've got beautiful properties up here. It's just lovely, isn't it? Anyways, enough of dreaming. Back to the tutorial. So, we are from the dreamland in Morocco. Now we are getting back to the tutorial. So we are going to click on the noise position controller there and then hit OK. Now, right away, of course, as you can tell, 3D Max is giving us something like a graph. You see that? It's almost the kind of thing that we just looked at through Google. And if you were to play the animation, can you see how the object is zigzagging all over the place? That's because, of course, it's now feeling the power of the noise being applied to it. Okay, let me just go ahead and save our scene so that we don't make any mistakes. Now, luckily for our sake, you see that what it's doing, it's moving all over the place because of what this graph information is telling it. Now, luckily for our own sake, 3D Max enables us to refine animation so that, of course, we get proper smooth motion on our object. And let me show you how to get it done. First things first, as you can tell, our object is moving about, yes, but the region or the area, the surface area which is trying to circulate around is a bit too small, it's too constrained. It's almost as if it was in a little jail trying to free itself. So we need to give it more room to dance around. And to do that, we adjust the strength values on the X, Y, and Z position by pushing them to much higher values. And you can tell already, by just moving the value higher, you can tell, of course, already it begins to move out of the area to which it was constrained. And then if you had to play this back, you see, now, of course, our little sphere has more room to dance about already. So we are winning in that department. And the value I used before was 2500. Okay, it's good enough to make it, dance about nicely. Now, as you can tell, of course, for now, it's only moving across the x-axis, so we need to adjust the y strength as well. So we push that to a higher value too. You see what happens when you move it to a higher value? You see, of course, now the object is free to move everywhere on the y-axis as well. You see that? Again, for this, I also use 2500. And now, of course, finally, it also needs to move up or down. To do that, of course, we adjust the Z value. You see that? Now, it's going to move about the Z value as well. And again, for that, I also use 2500. Okay. Now, to see your sphere in action, you actually end up having to zoom out, or else you won't see where it's going. You see now, of course, it's all over the place, and that's more or less already what we had in mind. Okay. But of course, there is a problem. And that problem is that it's not smooth. It's too rough. It's like the Devil of Tasmania from the Disney cartoons of back in the days. So we need to tone it down and make it a bit smoother. Okay. To do that, we're going to reduce the frequency to a lower value. And you can see by reducing the frequency, of course, things become more spread apart. You see that? If we reduce it maybe to 0.035, you see, the animation slowly is becoming more manageable, of course, okay? But of course, this is by no way smooth. We still have to refine it. Yeah, so the other thing to do to refine our animation is to turn off fractal noise. In fact, it's the most important thing to turn off so that we get smooth animation. So turn that off, and let's see what we get now. Aha! Our little hero is now having more or less proper animation. You see that? This is now much more refined than what we had before, and all that was done, of course, by turning off fractal noise. You can see, of course, the difference. This was before, and this, of course, after. And of course, it's looking very good. And remember, this is 3D Max is doing all this by itself, pre-calculated, simply because we knew how to use the power of noise animation. Okay, it's amazing how you can use funny tools in Max just to achieve a particular result. But anyways, that's the whole point in animation. You know, we always have to find inspiration from things that are not always related to one another. Okay. Now, the animation is going well, but I think we need to reduce it even further. So we're going to reduce the frequency to something like 0.015 and hit enter. There we go. Now, this is much, much better. Okay. Of course, you can make this even slower than what it is by simply reducing this value here. For instance, if you reduce this value here to 0.010, let's see what you get. You see, the animation, of course, is even much more smoother. And if you push it to 0.112, you see, of course, it gains a bit more speed and all that. So this is really up to you. Okay. And then we're also going to adjust the speed of the ramp just to refine it. You know, you see, of course, what the ramp adjustment does. It really flattens out the graph. You see that, so that it really becomes nice and smooth. Okay, and I'm sure you can even adjust this value as well. But remember, the main thing that speeds up our motion here is the frequency, which can be reduced, as you can see. Of course, can be reduced, can be increased, and then of course the results vary. I'm just gonna use mine that was there, and then the seed here just creates a different kind of animation altogether. You see that, So by adjusting the seed, you can always get different motion altogether, but it's still smooth and it still sticks to the parameters that we gave it already. So you see that by using a different seed, of course, the ball seems to move from a particular direction altogether. And remember, the main thing was to adjust this graph here. Now it almost looks like a straight line because, of course, things were refined. Now we can close that for now, and to access our object's motion parameter there, you can always go back to it by clicking on the motion tab, position, right click, and then select properties, and then of course it will reveal back to you all these parameters that we had. Okay, and then we need to adjust the time as well during which our animation will run. So to do that, we click on the time configuration button there, and then yeah, we are going to change our display here to minutes and seconds and ticks, because this is more reliable. And then we are going to make ours here last for maybe, let's say, 30 seconds, and then hit rescale time, and then hit OK and OK. Now notice what happens. Remember, the duration was first 3 seconds. Now we want it to animate all the way to 30 seconds. Now what happens to our animation when we play it back? Well, as you can see, 3D Max's timeline is running and our ball is still moving. You see that? And it's doing that all by itself. No matter how long the animation can last, we can be guaranteed that the sphere will keep spinning, will keep moving about randomly, you know. And this was really the core of what I wanted to teach you in this tutorial. Okay. Now the next thing, of course, is to create a particle system that will make all this random animation here to have a purpose, you know. So to do that, we go to the create panel, select particle systems, and then we are going to create PF source, and just drag one out like that for now in the scene. Select the rotation tool, turn on the angle snap toggle, and then we're going to turn it upwards to 180 degrees, so that way, yeah, the particles just flow upwards like that for now. Okay, so this is what's going to enable us to have our beautiful light strokes coming out of the sphere. Okay, now of course, for now, as you can tell, particle flow is just doing its thing, just spewing particles upwards. Now we need to bind it to the sphere so that it follows where the sphere is going. So let's go to the modify panel and then open particle view. This will launch this window here, of course, from which we can see all the parameters that are there. Let me just move this a bit to the side so that we can see, of course, what I'm doing. First things first, we need to go to the position icon. In fact, we don't need it. We are going to select the position object operator down there, okay, and drag it with your left mouse button and then move it above the position icon so that we can see a red line crossing through, so that of course now it replaces the position icon. So in other words, we took the position object and we dragged it there, and then we are going to tell this enables us to tell 3D Max what object should be emitting the particles. So we are going to click on the add button and then we're going to pick the sphere. There we go. Let me turn off the edge faces. So now you can see, of course, the sphere. You see that? Now the particles are coming from the sphere. Okay. And then you can see, of course, our particles are ending a bit too prematurely. Let's go to the birth settings. Number one, we don't want a particular amount of particles to come out. We want them to be coming constantly. So we're going to give it a rate. Okay, so there will be, for this point, at this point in time, we just want to see how particles flow. So at this point, there will be 60 particles coming out of the sphere per second. And then, of course, we need to adjust up to when should the particles come out. Well, remember, we change our settings here to say 30 seconds, like that, okay? So we're going to force, of course, for the emit stop here, we're going to enter there. Yeah, we'll enter there 30. That way, when we play back the animation, there we go. Now the particles are going to last for 30 seconds. You see that? They keep coming out of the sphere, and it's looking nice, isn't it? And our little sphere is just having so much fun in an empty space. Okay, let's continue. This is really fun. Now, for our exercise, I've noticed that a good red value will be 250, because we need enough particles to create the illusion of a light stroke coming out of it. So that's why I push mine to 250. You can push yours to higher or lower depending on what your computer can handle, but I recommend the red value of 250. So now you can see, of course, there are more, and yeah, everything is looking fine. Okay. And then, now, very important is that we need to force the position of the particles that are coming out. We need to force them to come out of the pivot of the sphere. You see that? First it was surface, and when it's surface, you can see the particles are just all over the place, right? So we need to force it to be on the pivot point of the sphere. That way, already you can see the particles are coming in a line. You see that? You see that? It's looking all nice. They look like they're all coming out of a straight line. You see that? So this is very, very important to do. Okay. Change the location to pivot. Okay. Let's continue. And then we also need to manipulate the speed at which the particles are coming out. To do that, we're going to drag a speed by icon operator and put it above the speed 01, like that. You see how all of a sudden the game changes. I mean, look at that. Now, you see that? Now the particles are sticking, of course, to the motion of the little sphere. You see that? And of course, it's looking marvelous. I mean, if you had to show this to anyone, I mean, this is fantastic looking already. You see that? Now, it's creating beautiful shapes that are really following the motion of the sphere. And that's exactly what you needed to get right away. Okay? And oh, for God's sake, please save your file. I don't want to hear, hey, Henrythejedi, I lost my file. Can you please send me your original file? Ha! There's no way on earth that's going to happen. Please save your file so that you don't experience disaster. Okay? Now, this is really, really turning out to be something marvelous, isn't it? Whew. It's like a projectile, a missile sort of on its way. Now, let's continue. Now, it's all looking good, but the particles are just staying where they are. I always like to add a third or a fourth dimension, if you want to call it, something just to enhance something, to make it slightly better than what it is. So for that, we are going to use the Force, not the Force from Star Wars, no, the Force from 3D Max, okay? So we are going to drag a Force operator there, and you can you can put it right above the rotation operator there, right, like that. Okay, that force that can enable us to make this scene more interesting is the wind. So we go to create panel, select space warps, and as you can see there are forces there. We are going to pick the wind and draw one out like that. Okay, and then we are going to tell, of course, 3D Max what force this needs to be. So click on the force and then hit add and pick the wind. And right away you can tell, now the particles no longer stay where they are. You see that? Because, of course, the wind is pushing them upwards. And that's the influence of the wind by itself. And then we're going to make the wind have a particular direction. So click on the rotation option. Let's turn it around. You see that? You see how the wind is affecting everything. We're going to push it to 40 degrees or so on the y-axis. Again, you can push it to whichever direction you want. But you can see, of course, from what we're having here, the wind has been tilted now to go that way. Okay. Now, let's adjust its settings so that it has more influence, because right now, things are flowing here, but nothing hectic is really happening. See, the things are just floating in the air. We need to push the wind strength to 3. So that, of course, it has more power. Let's just see again the influence now. You see, of course, now the wind has more power. Okay. In fact, too much power. And then we're going to reduce its decay value. It was 3. We're going to reduce its decay value to 0.03. Now you can tell, of course, what is happening. You see that, eh? But, of course, it doesn't seem like the wind has any effect anymore. Let's reduce the decay value a bit, but not too much, eh? Because we still, yeah, this is what we need. Okay, as you can see, what happens now is the following. As the wind blows, you see that the particles are now being twisted at particular sides. You see that? And that's just something that I just wanted to add on, really. And it's making things look nice, isn't it? You know, instead of them just floating, you know, randomly. You see that there's a bit of a bend happening over there. If you can, yeah, you see that, huh? So the wind bends the particles nicely. Okay. Now, it gets to a point where all of a sudden there are way too many particles in the scene. So we need the ability to delete particles when they reach a particular edge in the scene, so that we don't overburden the computer's CPU in rendering time. So to do that, we're going to add a delete operator. There it is. Delete. We are going to delete it by particle edge. And then, now, how long do we want our particles to last? Well, how about 10 seconds? So that will be the life of every particle. And then there needs to be a bit of variation in the way they are deleted in the scene. So when we play this back, you should check. After 10 seconds or so, the older particles will get deleted so that we don't overburden the scene. So that the scene remains clean. You see? So those remaining trailing ones, you see? Slowly and gently they are being deleted. You see that? You see? Beautiful, eh? You see that? So now the scene remains more or less relatively clean, no matter how long the particles last. If we turn off the delete operator, you see what will happen? You'll have all these particles in the scene and they won't be deleted. You see that? So with the delete operator on, they get wiped out so that we still have a clean scene to work on. And of course, if you want the particles to last longer, well, you just push up the lifespan of the particles. Maybe you want them to last until 20 frames, you know. That way, of course, they will last 20 frames, but beware, it will take a bit longer to render. Okay. And now, all this is looking good, but of course, what is actually being rendered? If you click on the quick render button there, you'll see, of course, what you've been up to. That is what is being created all along. It's just simple strokes, as you can see. By all means, it's already looking good, but of course, it's not anywhere close to what you're looking for. I just want to increase my rendering window here so you can see. Yeah, there we go. So you see what you're getting right now. It's just simple line strokes going, but they're nice, but they are not what we intended to do. So to do that, only materials are going to help us achieve that. First, we're going to add, in order for us to create the material that we need to force 3D Max to create a kind of material that will always appear no matter which angle the camera is looking. So to do that, there is something called shape facing operator. That's what we're going to drag above the shape operator like that. Okay. And then shape facing operator, of course, as I told you, will enable us to create materials that always face the camera. Of course, that means we need to create a camera. So we're going to go to views, and then we select create camera from view right there. Or you can press Ctrl C on the keyboard. Now, of course, the perspective viewport becomes the camera. And then we're going to, under the shape facing, we're going to click on the none button, select, and then we're going to click, of course, the camera O1, and then hit pick. And let's force it to display geometry. Now, at the moment, of course, you can see things are very, very small. Okay? To make them display, we are going to the shape facing operator here, and we're going to increase the size to something bigger. I think my setting that works is 58. But of course, from this, you can tell already that this enables us, of course, to see our object as they're being rendered. Okay, so that's the main thing. Okay, if we hit the quick render button now, let's see what we get. You can see, of course, what we're getting now, the little shapes now that are all bound together to create the illusion of a stroke. Okay, now of course we have to actually create the material, of course, that will end up being the strokes. But first, of course, save the scene, because we are going to jump into another program to enable us to do just that. And now, to create the material that will actually be the Lightstroke, you can use any application that you feel comfortable with that can draw pictures. So you can use sand, or you can use, I'm just joking. How can you draw something in the sand and bring it into the computer? Anyways, we are going to use Adobe Photoshop. You can use Microsoft Paint or Inkscape or GIMP or whichever program you're comfortable with, or even Corel Draw. So I'm going to go to Photoshop. I'm using, this Photoshop here. Now, this is where it's all going to go down, and this, in fact, happens to be one of the most important parts of our tutorial for today, because this is what will determine what material actually becomes a stroke. To do that, we're going to create a new file, and the dimensions are also important because it needs to be quite high res enough that we can use. So for the width, we're going to enter 1200 by 1200 pixels. And yeah, hit OK. And then, remember, if you're not using Photoshop, please just try to follow along, because what we are trying to create is exactly the same things. We are going to create, we're going to switch for the paint bucket option and then just paint it black. Okay. And then we are going to create the little things that are actually going to be the shape that become the light stroke. And don't worry if you don't end up with the same results as me, because I will supply you guys with the project files that contain these materials so that you can actually apply it right away and see what you get. Okay. Now, we're going to rename this here to the background. So background. And then we're going to create a new layer and also paint it black. And then let's rename it to line stroke line 01. Let me just rename mine here. I forgot. Yeah. And then we are going to reduce its opacity to 0 for now, because you just need to draw an outline of it. And then this is just going to be some random line that runs in the middle of the scene. First, we're going to use, let's see, what tool can we use? We can use the lasso tool. Yeah, and let me just push it back to 100. No, the lasso tool won't help. We're going to draw the line that will sit right in the middle of the stroke. And to do that, I'm using the pen tool, as you can see there, okay? And then using the pen tool, yeah, just go right away and try to do what I'm doing. You see that? I'm just creating a random line shape, and then I'm going to close it off like that. You'll notice, of course, Photoshop then gives us a line shape that is created there that we can use. Okay, and then its color is also very important. Let's see, if we were to hide the background, you can see, of course, what it actually is. Okay, so that was the first shape. We're going to create a new shape as well. And again, as I said, we are just doing random drawings here. Just try to do what I am doing. See that? These will actually end up becoming the shape of our line strokes. You can see again, if I hide both layers, you can see, of course, that's what it ends up becoming. Okay, perfect. New layer again, and then let's draw a stroke that will be sitting on that side. You can see it's nothing complicated. It's just it's just I'm just undoing mine. Control Z, Control Z. It's just random lines. Yeah, so you don't need to worry if yours is not straight or too curvy enough or what. Yeah, it's just random lines. Again, if we had everything else, this is what we are having. And then after that, let's create another layer. Now these layers here will be little spheres that will just be sitting at the corners there. Close it off. And let's create another one that sits there. You can see it's very simple. And we're going to have another one, little one there. Believe it or not, all these are going to help to give us exactly what you're looking for. And another smaller one there. Close it off. Okay. Perfect. And of course, please save this file as a Photoshop file, or whichever format will work best for you. Okay. So now we are going to play around with our layers here. And what we're trying to do is just bring down their opacities. But there's a proper way to do it, and that is first turn back on the background layer, and then let's start with this big one here. We're going to select it, right click, and then select rasterize vector mask, so that Photoshop can enable us to access some other kinds of its properties. We're going to then right click on the label there, not on it inside, but on the label right there. Right click and then select blending options, and then we're going to turn on color overlay, so that we're going to slap it with a particular color. And let's go for a gray color like that one, like that. Okay, hit OK, and then hit OK. Okay, and then we're going to right click, copy layer style, and let's go ahead and select this one here. Right click and then paste the layer style there. Right click and paste the layer style there. Right click, paste the layer style. You can see, of course, it makes life easier because you just right click things and paste layer styles so that they can all be gray at once. Now these little dots here need to be brighter than those strokes, because believe it or not, although these little dots here look simple, they actually do a big job in the animation. So we're going to double click on the color overlay option. Now these ones here, you see that we are making them, of course, much brighter. Hit OK, copy its layer style, and of course right click and paste the layer style. So of course now each of these dots here become brighter. Paste layer style, and of course paste layer style. There we go. Now the little dot strokes are brighter than, of course, the line strokes that we have on the inside. And please, of course, save your file. Okay.